Greetings, marketing students. I'm here today with Dr. Carlos Torelli, who is an expert in culture, branding, and marketing strategy. Welcome, Carlos.
Thanks for having me here.
Let's begin by talking a little bit about the relationship between cultural meaning and branding. Now, research in marketing tells us that consumers view brands as symbols, and they have a lot of symbolic meaning contained in them. And part of that meaning includes cultural symbols and cultural meaning. So, Carlos, your research looks into this topic and looks into the connection between brands and cultural meaning. So can you tell us a little bit about how brands come to contain cultural meaning for consumers?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. And, one of the things with culture is that culture is some people refer to culture as the software of the mind. Culture operates in the background and we don't always think about it. That's why in many cases we don't notice where we see cultural things embedded in products, in brands, or in monuments, in events. So brands have symbolism because we all agree that brands stand for something. And culture is something that allows us to operate as human beings. And culture determines, how we see it, how we greet, and many different things that we do automatically and don't think about. In that same way, we look for in the environment for things that allows us to communicate what's important about our culture. And one of the most important objects that we use to do that are brands and products. Again, we don't think about it, but we agreed upon that because the importance that culture has to allows us to coordinate also facilitates imbuing brands with cultural meanings that then we use to illustrate things. So to give you an example, we agreed that certain things in American culture are important, not because we just got together and decided so. It's because we started using things and we found that it was useful, and all of a sudden we started communicating it. Let me give you an example. Let's think about Cheerios, for instance. Cheerios is breakfast cereal. Those breakfast cereal has any cultural significance, but you could argue, well, probably could be or not. I'm not sure. We don't think about it. But in American culture, which is an individualistic culture, it's important that kids from very early on learn how to feed themselves. That's something that doesn't happen in every culture. But if you think, well, what can kids eat that they can eat safely? Well, Cheerios. You put Cheerios in their little seat, and they start grabbing Cheerios. And we refer sometimes to Cheerios as baby finger foods. They can really train themselves to grab it, eat it. It develops dexterity, but it also helps you if you're in a rush. You know that your kid might be eating something that is relatively nutritious. There could be some argument whether that's nutritious or not, but definitely it's better than something else. So all of a sudden, in the culture, we realize that that's something that's useful, that's practical, and then we disseminate that information. And all of a sudden, Cheerios develops into a cultural phenomenon, all Cheerios-like products. That happens automatically in a way, it's not like we decided consciously, let's take Cheerios and create it into a cultural symbol. It just happens because it's embedded in the culture. Marketers don't always think that their brands are going to become cultural icons. In many cases, it just happens. It happens because of this usefulness, this utility, this connection to the culture. One of the things that we find that determines, whether a brand becomes iconic is that notion that the brand symbolizes something that is essential of the culture. That notion of independence, individualism. We think brands like Nike, for instance. Nike stands for what? Stands for superior athletic performance. Well, American culture is all about superiority. We're the best at this. We're the top 10 school, the top 10 business school, the top 10 business program, the top 10 physicians. Well, you want to be the top 10 athlete. Well, that's the Nike kind of motto. So again, how Nike gets there is not because Nike purposefully decided to do that, although they pushed this image. But then the culture acquired this image and found it as useful to communicate something that is important about American culture. So one of the things as marketers that I propose is that then we should do that more consciously. We should be more intentional in trying to then imbue our brands with the meanings that are going to resonate with the culture and facilitate that cultural conversation to elevate our brand and not a competitor into a cultural icon.
And you have research that was published recently in the Journal of Marketing Research that talks about the cultural values that brands can also represent. Does this sort of go beyond just the utilitarian value of the brand? Do consumers actively look for brands that represent cultural values that are meaningful for them?
Yeah, absolutely. As individuals, we all have what we call a personal self, who we are independent from others, and we have a collective self. We're a college, we're very cognizant of, we're a Florida International University student, and we root for our team. Sometimes we think of ourselves based on our ethnicity. I'm a Hispanic. Or we think about ourselves as an American, we're thinking about the country. But I can think about myself as, as an athlete. I can think of myself as somebody who likes certain things, which is more personal. We'll have that degree of personalities, from very personal individual to more collective. And we strive for communicating that in different contexts. And brands allows us to do that. And if I want to communicate to others that I'm sophisticated and high status, then I wear Prada or I wear, any luxury brand, Louis Vuitton bags, etc. But if I want to communicate that I am somebody who is related to a group, then I might look for that symbolic brand. And that is where brands, we found that brands get to symbolize different groups. And then these groups, once this brand symbolizes these groups, when I affiliate myself with this brand, I'm kind of pledging my allegiance to the group and I'm symbolizing to others that I'm part of that group. And that adds some value. There is for consumers some element of, if I have to compare brand A and brand B gives me this collective symbolic meaning, then brand B has more value. Let me give you an example. I would argue that Coke and Pepsi are two brands that are almost identical. They are big consumer brands. Pretty much same product. In blind test, people can really not differentiate. Sorry, Coke and Pepsi fans. If you do a blind test, you won't really differentiate. There's been a lot of research done about that. Distribution is pretty much the same. It's sold everywhere, sold through grocery stores, vending machines, etc. Price is pretty similar. And the promotion is also almost identical. They are big mass advertisers that their communications are, exciting and, well done and aired in multiple media. But consistently, Coke is number 2 or 3 in the interbrand ranking of brands, and Pepsi is in the 20th, around the 20th level. And that's been forever. Why? Why is it that Coke and Pepsi that are almost identical, Coke is a lot more valuable? Well, I would argue that Coke is more culturally symbolic for multiple groups. It's an American icon. And if we think about Coke as an American icon, we have to go back to, issues during World War II and how much Coke really connected and then embedded itself in the culture, helping to ship bottles of Coke to the soldiers that were fighting in Europe. But also Coke is a global icon. It's more recognized as this brand that symbolizes, a global identity and this notion of globalization and cosmopolitanism and homogenization of values than Pepsi. Then that extra value is not like we're thinking, okay, I'm going to buy Coke because of this. Again, cultural stuff, we don't always do it consciously. We do it unconsciously, automatically. And then there is where that extra value is for a marketer very important, because consumers don't even know why they are doing it. But they are connecting with the brand at a deeper level because it provides that collective meaning that's adding an extra value for the consumer.